May 2025. High above the Baltic Sea, less than 40 nautical miles from the Russian border, two U.S. Air Force B-52H bombers sliced through heavy gray clouds. These weren't routine flights. They were strategic signals, flying symbols of American nuclear capability heading directly toward one of the most fortified regions in Russian territory, Kaliningrad. Within minutes, radar screens lit up across western Russia. Two Su-27 fighter jets scrambled from Chkalovsk Air Base. No announcements, no formal intercept protocol, just rapid ascent, engines howling through cloud cover, and a tightening approach toward the American bombers. When the jets closed in, the silence only deepened the tension. One of the Su-27s locked onto the lead bomber with radar, a brief but deliberate act of aggression. It then surged past the bomber's nose, close enough to rattle the B-52's control systems and shake the crew inside. It was a calculated threat, no contact, no missiles, but loud enough in intent to send a message that couldn't be ignored. This wasn't an isolated event. It was the latest and most dangerous aerial standoff since the Cold War. The B-52s were part of Bomber Task Force 25-1, a NATO training mission involving U.S., Swedish, and Finnish aircraft operating for the first time together near Russian airspace. The bombers never crossed into hostile territory. They didn't need to. Their proximity alone was a statement. Kaliningrad, Russia's bastion of air defenses and missile systems, was in their sights, but only just. The skies above the Baltic had become the chessboard of modern strategy. On the ground, global leaders kept up appearances. In the air, power dynamics shifted by the second. Just days earlier, Russia simulated a nuclear strike far to the south. Meanwhile, more than 30,000 NATO troops were deployed across Europe in major drills. These weren't directly connected, but together they formed a backdrop of readiness. That's why the B-52s mattered. Their presence was a move in a larger, silent game. As the bombers neared the edge of Russian-controlled airspace, they kept formation steady, slow, disciplined. The Russian fighters closed in without a word. One moved into a position no more than a kilometer away, just shy of crossing the line from shadowing to outright threat. That line nearly disappeared when the Su-27 simulated a missile lock before blasting directly over the bomber's fuselage. The noise and turbulence were a clear message. You're not welcome here. Neither side broke formation. No one turned back. The U.S. crew stayed on course. The Russian jets maintained proximity. With no shots fired, the standoff remained just short of ignition. But the danger wasn't over. It had only shifted. The skies above the Baltic had become electrically charged with mistrust and surveillance. As the aircraft turned away, NATO's airborne early warning systems kicked in. AWACS aircraft patrolled nonstop. Tankers circled in high-altitude holding patterns, ready to refuel any NATO jet pushed into extended patrol. Underground command centers across the alliance monitored the situation minute by minute, maps glowing with radar trails and threat zones. The NATO crisis hotline was activated, not for negotiations, but to keep one misread signal from spiraling into something far worse. On the Russian side, the S-400 missile systems in Kaliningrad spun into high alert, scanning every aircraft from the Baltic states to Norway. War hadn't begun, but peace had been suspended. This was the new reality of confrontation. No explosions, no declarations, just deliberate moves and controlled aggression. A slip in navigation, an overextended radar lock, a pilot's hesitation. It wouldn't take much to trigger catastrophe. Every second, every flight pattern, every unspoken rule had to be perfectly followed. There was no margin for error. When the jets disengaged and the bombers returned to base, the physical tension eased. But neither side powered down their systems. No one went back to normal. Electronic surveillance remained in full swing. Reconnaissance satellites shifted their gaze. Military analysts parsed radar logs and flight data. And in war rooms across Europe, commanders prepared contingency plans for what could come next. Publicly, the U.S. called it routine patrol. Russia labeled it provocation. Each capital issued rehearsed statements, defending their posture. Washington spoke of deterrence, transparency, and freedom of navigation. Moscow warned of threats, escalation, and sovereignty. Behind the scenes, planners in both nations examined what came terrifyingly close to ignition and began rewriting future rules of engagement. Kaliningrad didn't fire, the B-52s didn't back off, and both sides walked a line so thin that next time, even a gust of wind could push things over the edge. The confrontation wasn't a battle, but it was a test, not of weapons, but of willpower, patience, and calculation. The bombers flew away. The fighters returned to base. But the message echoed. In the skies above Europe, tension now flies with every shadow, and the quietest moments can carry the loudest warnings.